I am currently self-employed. I left the workforce almost a year ago now, and it's been 9 months since I started my own business. So just hoping that that is going to be the path that I can sustain for a while. My disability has put me in the position that I am not seeking employment. And so the reason that I've gone down the path of self-employment is due to my disability and challenges that I've faced over the last 20 years. My experience with disability is that I grew up with family members that were diagnosed with disabilities at a young age. And so I actually grew up into a caregiver role for older siblings, and I learned what disability looked like in a very specific way, which didn't align with my experience. So it took me many years to acknowledge my own challenges and my own disability. And so basically I didn't know I had one until the last 10 years or so. I've been kind of slowly exploring that. So with employment, I basically, didn't know that I had a disability, just thought there was something wrong with me for many years. And so I spent a lot of years trying to hide it and trying to cover up the challenges that I was facing. And that made employment very difficult. And so far self-employment has been providing me with more flexibility and a bit more ability to craft my own journey to accommodate my own disability. I haven't used many employment supports. I ultimately worked in retail for the beginning of my career, and I ended up going to business school. And so I feel like that was my way of, learning about how the workplace works and how employment journeys look. And actually, in my first year of business school, the first course was career development plan. So they really did provide us with a lot of that. I still have it. And so there's this interview that's like, what do you want to do with your career? And I said, I want to start a business that aligns with my values. And so, it's been many years since then, but I've kind of made it to that point. So I really used business school as a way to try new things, learn new things, and really figure out what I wanted to do with my career. But ultimately, I kind of always knew that I wanted to start my own business. And so I've kind of taken a lot of that into my own hands. Interviews are brutal. I've done many. I've done many in different industries, different formats. When I went to business school and in working retail, I feel like I learned how to be a professional masker of my disability, and I learned how to perform in a way that employers wanted. And so I have been able to master a lot of interviews, and I have failed a lot of interviews. And ultimately, it's whether or not I'm masked sufficiently. And so I've been to interviews where I walk away feeling good, as though I might get the job, but I feel kind of gross in the sense that I feel like I wasn't me, and I was able to meet what they were looking for, but it didn't feel authentic to me. And I've left a lot of interviews feeling when I've been vulnerable or when I've maybe shared too much about who I really am, I've left with a lot of shame. I have a few examples. There was one interview I'll never forget. I went into the interview. There was 3 people, and I was answering the questions. I was very qualified for the job. And I remember seeing that one of the interviewers had written down on her sheet of paper in huge letters, eye contact, with lines under it. And I saw that, so obviously I wasn't making eye contact. But I was like so shook up by that, and I think that that's an example of one of those sort of social norms that are expected within an interview setting that's really hard for like anybody. And when that happened, that really was hard for me. And I think the hardest part about that experience was I left feeling very ashamed. I remember getting into the car and being like, that did not go well. I definitely didn't get that job. And it was because I was just being me, and maybe I think I shared like a bit about, some of the challenges that I have and was really honest. And I think the hardest part about that was that they didn't even call me or email me afterwards. And like, I've done a lot of interviewing. I've been a manager. I've done, human resources. Like, that is so important, especially when somebody has a bad experience. I knew I didn't get the job, but the fact that they didn't even write anything to me or an automated no thank you, that really made things harder. And I think it's important to humanize the interview process. And like I said, I knew I didn't get the job, but it really just kind of like solidified that feeling of shame for me, and it just made me feel really bad about myself. So whether or not employers have trusted me to do the job, I would say yes, because my strategy has been to apply for a job that I'm overqualified for and go in and be exceptional. Find my niche and where I provide the most value and make myself irreplaceable. Like, it's been a very clear pattern for me. And so definitely when I come in and I, demonstrate my dedication and my work ethic, my employers have been able to trust me. Now, that's not a sustainable strategy. So eventually, throughout that process, I set very high expectations, and I'm not always able to meet them. And so that's where it's almost like, instead of proving my ability, I almost have to prove that I can't do something. And that's really hard, because they're like, no, but you've been doing it. And I'm like, no, but I actually am really suffering, and it's really hard. And here's all of the things that I've sacrificed to be able to perform at this level. And so then that's where the trust can kind of get a little bit broken, because they're not always able to really believe that I'm having these challenges, because I've been really good at hiding them. And so that can be a little bit complicated. For accommodations, I feel like I've kind of crafted my career journey to accommodate my needs. I would say for the first 10 to 15 years, I subtly got accommodations by being able to really show what I'm good at and make myself irreplaceable in that, and then eventually convince them that, I don't need to do that other thing that's hard for me. And I've done it in a way that is very discreet and strategic, which I don't recommend, because that has, it's exhausting. It's gotten harder over time. And so in the last, I would say maybe 8 years or so, I've began to really learn more about my identity, learn more about my disabilities, seek diagnosis, find others who have similar experiences, and really learn to name what those things were that I was avoiding for so long, and what accommodations could help. And so I've been better at requesting accommodations, but it hasn't always been successful. I think because I am such a high performer, and I joke about being a professional masker, or at least I used to be. I think it's really hard to request accommodations because I'm not always believed that I need those things. And so they'll be like, okay, sure, but then it kind of gets forgotten about. When I've requested accommodations, I've always come in with explaining the challenges that I face and also bringing the strengths that I have because of the uniqueness of my abilities. And employers love that. So that's been helpful, being able to show like, this is something I'm challenged with, but it also makes me good at this other thing. The challenge I've had with accommodations is that dismissal of my disabilities, diagnosed or not. If it doesn't match what somebody perceives or what somebody's understanding is, and they're not willing to listen and be curious and be open to understanding your experience, sometimes it can be really hard for them to believe and support. So again, to accommodate myself, I've always gone in to a role that I'm overqualified for. Also, like, I see a role and I'm like, I know I can do that. I can probably do more. That probably isn't going to, cover all of my bills, but I can do that and sustain that. And then when I go in, my approach has been to do that job well, often, improve it. I'm an operations person, so I should preface that to say, like, my expertise is to come in and make improvements in businesses. And so when I come into a role, I come in, I sort of, accomplish what's expected, and I make the improvements, and then I like to move on to the next thing. And so I have really been very involved in my own career development in that regard. Things that I've experienced that make me feel part of a team include mostly just being able to show up as myself. And I think being able to be a whole person is very helpful. So I have been successful at hiding, a lot of the challenges that I face, and being able to, seem like I have it all together and make everybody happy and be a perfectionist. And I think that the most helpful thing for me is to be able to show up on the bad days, and be able to feel safe to, one day feel really good and be productive and be accomplishing things and whatnot, and then the next day, maybe not being so productive and maybe having a bit of a harder day and just kind of getting through it. I think it's really important to have workplace cultures where people can try new things, ask questions. I am very curious. I like to have all the information, and if I don't, I get stuck. And so having the opportunity to ask questions, even if people don't have the answers, but just being able to ask or have someone to go to, and knowing that it's okay to make mistakes or try things. I think that those are like the biggest things that have been really valuable for me in workplaces I've been in. For what I wish employers knew about disability, I think that we often think of disability more so as how we experience someone versus how they actually experience the world. And I know very well that we love schemas and definitions, and we love to make sense of things, because I do for sure. Like, that is something that I really enjoy doing. But we can't when it comes to people. People are very complex, have so many different parts of their experience and their backgrounds and their genetics and their history and their cultures and identities. And I think that we need to stop trying to put people in boxes, while also acknowledging that our systems are broken. They're not created to be equitable to everybody. And so we need to acknowledge that we have systems in place that are creating disadvantages for some, while also not focusing on that othering aspect and really focusing on the human and treating people as humans, treating people with respect and dignity, and, you know, listening to who they are and what they say their experiences are, and not trying to define or compare or categorize, because I think that that's just creating more harm.